We now turn our attention to boxing. The super middleweight fight coming up on February the 17th, 2018. George Groves versus Chris Eubank Jr. This is a genuine mega fight as far as I'm concerned, especially in Britain. George Groves has had a good career. I mean, he came to the fore having fought Froch twice. Yeah, he actually ended up with 2 losses if you actually look at the paperwork, if you look on his record. But in the first fight was stopped early, in the opinion of many people. He was certainly winning the fight early on. He had Froch down early on, and later on, the fight was stopped. And some people think it was premature. I believe that he definitely had a chance to win that. It was stopped. Froch came back, and most people, the common consensus seems to be that Froch would have gone on and won anyway. Froch, was known for getting stronger later on in the fight and having tremendous stamina. But obviously, George Groves, being the much younger man at the time, and having the belief that he had at the time, he was unbeaten at the time, and he really believed he could beat Froch. There's a possibility he could have gone on and win, but we'll never know. Then in the second fight, Froch got the knockout in front of 80,000 at Wembley. But those would have been 2 big experiences for Groves. Away from that, he's been involved in numerous title fights. It took him a while to eventually win a title, having lost to Froch on those 2 occasions and then losing to Badou Jack. Some people think that was a close fight. I think Badou Jack might have just shaved it, but it was a close fight. It went the distance. It was a split decision for Badou Jack. But then you've got to give him credit. He came back, he rebuilt, had some warm-up fights, had some fights to keep his hand in, if you like. And then eventually he got his shot at the title, and he actually won. So he picked up the title off Fedor Chudinov at Bramall Lane. And since then he's defended against Jamie Cox, and now he's going to defend against Chris Eubank Jr. His record, George Groves, is 27-3-0. Those 2 KO losses coming to Cole Froch. But, we've discussed the second one. The second loss was conclusive. It was a clean knockout. A lovely knockout for Froch. First one, a bit contentious. And then we come on to Chris Eubank Jr., who, his record is relatively clean. There was one massive blemish on it, though, is that fight against Billy Joe Saunders, which went to points. Personally, I don't think he was ready. I was surprised. He was a very young man then. Still a young man now, but as a very young man then, he took that challenge on, fighting Billy Joe Saunders, who's a tremendous boxer. And it's only now Billy Joe Saunders is being heralded as such after outboxing David Lemieux, but he's always been, more of a skilled in-ring tactician. Good footwork, good ring IQ, good selection of shots. He's not the most heavy-handed person, Billy Joe Saunders, but it's murder to beat him in boxing. Unless you knock him out, it's murder, because he's just a tactician in ring. If it goes to points, Billy Joe Saunders is likely to win. It doesn't matter who he fights. If he's talking about facing Canelo and GGG and people like that now. If it goes to points, it'd be hard to bet against Billy Joe Saunders, because unless there's been a knockdown in the fight, he's just a great in-ring tactician. He picks his shots. He's very smart. His feinting is good. But anyway, this video is not about Billy Joe Saunders. I'm just qualifying that loss that Chris Eubank Jr. has had. Billy Joe Saunders is a tremendous competitor. So he has that loss. Away from that, the competition has been nowhere near as good as what George Groves faced. If you look at the record, after Billy Joe Saunders, he's beaten Dmitry Chudinov, Tony Jeter, Gary Spike O'Sullivan, Nick Blackwell, where that fight, Nick Blackwell sustained some serious injuries in that fight. Tom Doran, Reynold Quinlan, there's that fight for the IBO belt, which some people thought, was a bit of a joke on ITV box office, but he got past Reynold Quinlan. And then he fought Arthur Abraham, which is a bit more of a harder test. Obviously, it was only July last year. Abraham, not at his peak. He lost his title. He had a title for a long time. He is a legend, though, Abraham. So it's a nice name to have on the record, but it wasn't a peak Abraham. It was Abraham probably, slightly past his best. Then a recent knockout for Chris Eubank Jr. over Avni Yildirim. I don't think Yildirim was in the same class as Eubank, and he's shown that. So now we've got a situation where we've got 2 fighters who are, near enough peak. I would say George Groves has a few more miles on the clock. having that knockout loss to Carl Froch and a gruelling loss to Badu Jack. Any loss to Badu Jack is gruelling. Going up against the fitness and endurance of Badu Jack and power for over 12 rounds. It's never easy. You're going to incur some damage there. Eubank, I don't think he has any sort of damage on that level. He's got the loss to Billy Joe Saunders, but as I said before, Billy Joe Saunders is not a big puncher. He's had it all his own way, really, Eubank, but obviously in competition a lot lower than that of George Groves. The thing is now, with Eubank Jr., we have to be careful because he's been very cleverly marketed. It's been taken onto RTV box office and ITV, and that's been a real success. So his name's out there. So I'm wary of being drawn up into all that frenzy about Eubank. And obviously there's the razzmatazz that his father brings, Chris Eubank Sr. But all in all, what we've got here is two different styles. We've got George Groves, who's got that lengthy, rangy jab, which if he perfects and uses carefully and keeps Chris Eubank Jr. at range, is a very good chance of winning the fight. The other weapon George Groves has is a heavy right hand. Martin Murray, has fought George Groves. He's fought a lot of big punches. He's fought Gennady Golovkin. Incidentally, he's fighting Billy Joe Saunders next, who we've previously mentioned. But Martin Murray said George Groves' right hand is as hard a shot as he's ever taken. So someone who's experienced the power of Gennady Golovkin and then mentioned George Groves as having a more memorable punch than Golovkin, you've got to take it seriously, the power of Groves in that right hand. He's had Froch down. So, we have to give the power of Groves respect. So we've got that jab, we've got that right hand. With Eubank, slightly different. Wouldn't say the evidence suggests he's not as powerful, one-punch power-wise, as George Groves, but he's got that fitness. He's got a tremendous engine, and he's got that, that warrior mentality. Chris Eubank Sr. has passed that on to him. I think Chris Eubank Jr. actually believes deep down that, he's the chosen one, if you like, in the middleweight division. He believes at his weight, he's unbelievable. Unbeatable. His endurance could be viewed to be unbelievable because he does have a tremendous engine. The way he goes on, when he starts landing those shots against Nick Blackwell, blimey, he really gave Nick Blackwell the works. He really went after him. It's unfortunate what happened in that fight. George Groves also has a similar experience with what happened to Edouard Goodnecht in 2016. I believe he's had life-changing injuries after that fight, so they both had experience of that. But, overall, in terms of making a judgment, we just have to decide, is it going to be the jab of Groves grinding out a points victory from distance, or is it going to be perhaps a stoppage at the hand of that deadly right hand from Groves, or is it going to be Chris Eubank Jr. bamboozling Groves with a range of shots from all different angles, uppercuts particularly, hooks, all types of punches. I don't think he's a huge jabber, Eubank. I don't know if that's been brought into his game. But, pretty much self-trained Eubank. I don't know if he's decided and looked at Groves' strategy and seen that jab and decided to work on the jab and maybe implement it a bit more. I don't know, but up to this point he hasn't. He's just gone in there. He likes to make it a fight. He likes to get toe-to-toe and make it scrappy. And then that's where his fitness and his speed of shots, have their greatest sort of impact. It's a very difficult one to call. If you look at the actual records, you have to say Groves has fought a higher level of competition, and as a result, as far as paperwork goes and as far as doing your research and looking at the history, Groves, you've got to say Groves would be the favourite on that basis. But then when you bring into the unique situation that Eubank has with his father, what a legend he was, with all that experience, with the belief system he has, with the level of training that Eubank does, not to say George Groves doesn't train to an equal level of intensity as Eubank Jr., but Eubank Jr. is always training. He doesn't have camps. He's perpetually training. There's a lot of different factors. Personally, I'm seeing points. I think it'll go to points. I don't see, unless there's a knockout punch from Groves, I certainly don't see Eubank quitting. He's known for that. Even I've seen an interview with Adam Booth, who used to train Eubank Jr., and from what he seemed to be saying, he wouldn't be drawn. He didn't say it in as many words, but he wouldn't select who he thought was the favourite for this fight. But he seemed to be saying, from what I could gather, that Eubank Jr. had something special. It seemed to be a special endurance. That's the sort of meaning I took from what he was saying, although he spoke in riddles as he does sometimes. He doesn't give much away, does he, Adam Booth? But, we've got to be careful as well with taking Adam Booth at his word. Obviously, he had, I think it was an acrimonious split with George Groves. They tried to make out that it was a pleasant parting of ways, but I don't see it that way. I think it was pretty acrimonious, so maybe there's a little bit of bitterness there to George Groves. I don't know. But, taking him at his word, he seemed to be saying Eubank had something. It was almost as if he'd seen something from Eubank that he hadn't seen from other people. So he's got that endurance in the locker. Now, getting to the conclusion, I'm waffling now. My pick is going to be Eubank Jr. I think that Eubank Jr. he's come to his absolute peak now. I would say Groves, although he's a champion, he's a defending champion. He's at a peak level, but I think he's just had a little bit more taken out of him in his career up to now. That hasn't been revealed in his recent fights. I think it's fair to say, apart from the title fight against Chudinov, he hasn't had as a vigorous opponent as Badu Jack since he lost to Badu Jack, but he is now, and he's going to be called on to, show his best. I think Eubank's going to try and make it into a toe-to-toe sort of a scrap. I think that's what he wants to do. He tried to do it with Billy Joe Saunders. It didn't work. Billy Joe Saunders stuck to a game plan. If Grove sticks to his game plan, hiding behind that jab, keeping Eubank at range, I think it's going to be a tough night for Eubank, and it'll be a riddle he has to solve in terms of his strategy, boxing skill. If we look at the betting, Chris Eubank Jr., the best price you can get is around, it's been shortened, it's 4-6. A lot of people are offering around 8-13, so he's been shortened up. There has been quite a media train behind Eubank. I don't know if that's something to do with it. There's a lot of hype behind it. George Groves is widely available, 11-8, 6-4. So looking at the odds, I think Chris Eubank Jr. is a bit short there in terms of the value. I would have Eubank. I think it's a very close fight. Me personally, I'll be looking at Eubank 4-5, 1.8. Him now being shaved into 4-6 and even 8-13, it suggests there's a lot of support behind him media-wise, and people have jumped on board that. I'm going to stick with my recommendation as Eubank winning. I sometimes have this problem with value and actually picking a winner. In terms of the value, George Groves at a 6-4, I think is very generous. I think there's some value there on Groves, but I'm not giving a pick on the basis of value. As far as this goes, I'm picking a winner, and I think Chris Eubank Jr. is going to get it done, outlasting Groves and getting a points decision. It could even be a split decision. And also, I would say it wouldn't be stupid, and just as I look at the odds now, it's something I'm going to be doing. I would chuck half a unit, a small stake on the draw, because these two, they're going to be completely motivated. They're going to be in perfect physical condition. The knockout, it's going to take a hell of a punch to keep these two down. I think Eubank Jr. will get up time and time again, and so will Groves. I don't think they're going to stay down. So the draw is out at 28-1. I can see here as big as 28-1 in the market. So have a look at that. Put half a unit on that. But my recommendation on this one will be Eubank, probably on points. I won't be drawn on the method, but I'm just going to say Eubank Jr. to win. At odds of 4-6 is available. Please give any comments on what I've said. Justify your comments. Say why you think Groves will win, or why you think Eubank Jr. will win, and just enjoy the fight. It's going to be amazing. There's no doubt about that on ITV Box Office. Hope you enjoy it, and see you next time.